All right.
2, 1, go.
Hey, everybody. This is Corey Thompson from Dice Tower Now and Dice Tower Dish.
And this is the Podfather of Gaming, Stephen Bonacore. You are listening to Board Games Insider, episode 270. And we're recording this on March 29th, 2023. Board Games Insider is a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. And I got another text yesterday from Tom Vassell. He continues to be nice to me. But I'm wondering, what is Tom Vassell up to? Do you know, Corey? I mean, something's going on here if he's attempting to be nice.
I know, but I'd have to kill you.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's, yeah. There's an evil plot afoot, and I'm certainly not involved.
There's a plot afoot against the Podfather of Gaming via the wannabe Tom Vassell, who thinks he's only mad because I created the name, or the name was given to me and he never thought of it for himself. That's fine. But Corey, really much more importantly, you've got some interesting news and you've got an interesting location you're even broadcasting from. So what's going on with Corey Thompson?
So I am actually broadcasting from the Above Board Studios. This is our writing room with our game library behind us.
Nice.
And I am in LA prepping and planning for videos, output, getting the studio finished. Exciting stuff.
That's like crazy, dude, that you're like a Hollywood producer now. I mean,
Hollywood is a good 5-10 miles away. No.
You're a Santa Clarita producer, wherever the heck you are. I don't know.
I'm adjacent, LA adjacent.
That's really cool, man. I think that's great.
I'm having a great time with
Do you have any, I mean, obviously we can't go deeply into this, but do you have any time where you're going to first show something out there?
Obviously, everything is really new. We filmed a lot of things at Dice Tower West, really exciting stuff that we're putting together and editing right now. We are planning on having videos coming out in April. So
that's awesome.
I wish I could narrow it down more than that, but
that's pretty awesome. That's really soon. I thought it was going to be like 6 months. Great. What else going on?
Played a couple games that I thought were particularly exciting. I played Revive finally. It's one of the Essen releases. Really interesting engine building Euro with a lot of tracks that interplay with each other. I really enjoyed it. Thinky. I got to go back and play that one again. And then actually here in the studio, we started playing Skyrim, the board game from Modiphius. It's a recent delivery Kickstarter, a game found technically. And it's an adventure dungeon crawl RPG game. I love the video game Skyrim, so we're having a really good time with it. I think this one might show up in a video, and we're going to see what happens.
I bet that's the reason you're playing it. It's going to be a video sometime soon.
Maybe.
No promises.
This is all for work. The things that I go through for work.
We suffer for our
we do. Suffer for our art.
For our art. So over here at the Podfather of Gaming, I'd mentioned first I'm gonna make a challenge of the week. Ignacy loves those of the week. So my challenge of the week to everybody else is, and I've mentioned this before, is to please go over to the World Series of Board Gaming website, WSBGVegas.com. And if you click a little further, WSBGVegas.com/about-WSBG, or just go to the link About Us, you're going to see a really, really pretty face there. And I don't mean John Hagmeyer, the chairman of the board. I mean Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming. He's got his face there because I'm, as I mentioned to only the people who listen to the end of the episode, that I was appointed to be a member of the board of the World Series of Board Gaming, which is a great honor, and it's going to be interesting. And no, this does not mean I'm out of retirement. For all you guys out there constantly saying, "Oh, obviously you're out of retirement. You're designing games. You're doing this.
Retiring. You're not actually doing anything.
That's right.
You're a designer and you're on a board. And
that's right.
Any more things? I mean, I am president of Gamma now.
But that's never gonna happen. Ever. Never. There's also a major shout out to Russ Wakeland of the D6 generation. No, Russ, I am still retired. This is just a thing. They've asked me to give some governance. It's a governance thing, and I'm not getting paid. The biggest compensation here is that I'm going to continue to be a VIP. So they fly out to Vegas during the World Series board game. But the point of this entire thing, but that was before I was appointed. But the point of this entire thing is that I really think that people, we've got like some of the most alpha of alpha type gamers who listen to this, of course, because why would you listen to 2 or 3 jamokes, from across the world talking about news of the industry when you can actually be playing the games? So
I know.
really,
why would you listen to this?
Why would you listen to this?
Why would you? Don't you have something better to do?
So I think that there are lots of people out there that if you go to wsbgvegas.com and check out the structure of this, you could potentially win $25,000 plus all these other prizes, rings and bracelets, real gold stuff. So, by the way, Corey, you should come. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump Vegas in the end of October. I guarantee I can probably make you a VIP
the end of
too.
September, isn't it?
End of September, beginning of October. I can make you a VIP.
How come I know when it is?
All right, I made a mistake. You want to come? I'll probably be able to add you to the VIP list.
I think I'm washing my hair that day.
We'll talk about it. But anyway, check it out. And if you use the code Podfather, if you book the 4 event or the 4 event and stay package, you get $40 off. They have given me that to do. I get no compensation from that either. I'm trying to help it out. I think it's a great, great, great idea. And by the way, Corey, if you come, we can torture Tom Vassell in stereo because he is the guest of honor. Anyway.
Wow, that's tempting.
That's tempting. That is tempting. Anyway, I mentioned last time that I was on a trip just this past weekend. I got back on Monday late to see my oldest friends in the world up in northeastern Pennsylvania. We only get together between once a year to once every other year or so. So it's just a nice thing that we can do once in a while. Eating, drinking, playing music, jamming. It's so much fun. And a little gaming. And I curated the games to bring, because these guys are not gamers, certainly not the way we or our listeners are gamers. So these are the games that I brought with me. I brought the Stronghold Games Fast Forward series. You remember that? There's no rules. You just open the box, you start playing. I brought The Mind. I brought In Vino Morte, which is the scene from The Princess Bride where, you must have put the poison in front of me, but knowing that you put the poison in front of me, you must have given, that whole thing, and you try to, kill people at the table with a 1 card. It's a micro game. So Clover, Just One, and the Crew Deep Sea Missions, and actually brought a couple other ones like Scout, which we did not get to.
That's a great set of games.
Yeah, so and if you can figure out the reason, right? These are all very rules-light games that anybody can learn and play if you have the basics of, a game. So I was really excited, and literally we played every one of these, plus I had a couple more. So they kept asking, hey, let's play another one. Let's play a different one. So I was very happy to get these. I used to try to bring like terraforming Mars level stuff, and it was a disaster, especially after a few drinks. It was not going to happen. So I've gotten smart about my curation for these guys.
It's really interesting. We often talk about how the board game industry is following alongside the video game industry, and we're taking over a lot of the trends that the video game industry does. And one of the things the video game industry has definitely done for a long time now is games do not come with instructions. You boot them up, you start playing, and it shows you how to play. The beginning is easier. There's a tutorial. You do not need instructions. So I know there's been several attempts in board games to try to make board games without instructions, and some have worked and some have not. And I think especially this Freedom and Freeze's series, the
Fast
Fable
Forward
games,
and Fable
games.
Yep.
Fabled Fruit, I think, was the first one.
Well, we had the Fast Forward games, and there was 5 in that line, and they were all literally kind of a small box game where you have a deck of cards, you put it on a table. This side says the first card on this side says this is the back of the deck. Turn the deck over. You turn it over, and it says this is the first card. Pick this up when you're ready to start playing, and that's no rules in the game. So that was that, and then he had a Fable game. We called it the Fable games, where the game would change over time. So you did have to read the cards that are right in front of you and say, okay, you bring your guy here, you collect some fruit. You do this, you could do this.
Yeah.
But then, like, the next card would come out and the card would go away and stuff like that. So the game
I love that
evolved over time.
trend. And
Yeah.
even so far as what we've been talking about a little bit, The Adventures of Robin Hood from Michael Menzel.
Yep.
That also is very, very rules light. There's almost no prep for that. So I
Right.
like that trend. That's a
Yeah.
neat one that I think is coming over from video games.
Very cool. Well, we went a little long there about that trip, but it was a good one, and we played some really good stuff. If you guys are getting people into games, consider the ones that I just mentioned. In the meantime, let's go to the event deck. So looky here. When you mentioned Modifius games, I said, oh, I bet something is going to be said during the news portion of the show.
I might have planned that.
Very. Wow, you actually read my show notes. Thank you, Corey. I appreciate that.
Well, like 5
Modifius
minutes before.
Modifius Entertainment expands senior management team, updates development structure, and brand management. But the biggest portion of this entire thing is that they're expanding really from RPGs, which was their base of operations. That was their core,
and miniatures games. Yeah.
core stuff for a while, but now are moving into more of a board game centric organization, or at least adding an arm just for board games, and they've expanded their management team to do so. You mentioned what game is it again?
Skyrim. Yeah.
Skyrim, the board game, right? That's what it's called.
Correct.
And
yeah,
and that has just come out.
it was a Kickstarter, and it was delivered months ago, not
Okay.
very many months ago.
Right, just within the last few months, so probably retail, I assume, fairly recently, but they're obviously doing it in a fairly big way, because this, when you put out a big dungeon crawler, that you're not just dabbling, you're going headlong into this.
Yeah, exactly. The other interesting thing, Modifius does have this background in RPG and miniatures games, especially. It looked like Skyrim, when it delivered, was a transitional type game. One of the options with the Skyrim Kickstarter is there was an extra box that turned the board game into a miniatures skirmish game. So they played both worlds with Skyrim.
No kidding. Very, very interesting. Well, the next piece of news here is near and dear to my heart. Asmodee's Office Dog brand announces its first 3 games. So, Office Dog, Asmodee's newest studio, launched in May 2022, is pleased to announce its first 3 games, all designed by freelance game designers. The games, which cover a variety of styles and mechanics, from deduction to engine building, showcase the talent and creativity of their creators. Quote, "This freshman class has excited us with their dynamic games, and we can't wait to bring them to the public in 2024. This first collection is sure to please all types of players, from family-oriented to core-focused, and includes our first game based on Legends of the Five Rings," says Luke Petterschmidt, head of the Office Dog Studio. So they've got a game called World Traveler. They got a game called River of Gold.
Word Traveler. It's
Oh,
a play on words.
Oh, Word Traveler.
I know. And it's from the designer of Decrypto. It's basically kind of a Carmen Sandiego, where is the person hanging out? You have to guess where, but it's a word game to figure out where one of the players is.
And we have River of Gold. Also, this is the one that's going to be based on Legends of the Five Rings. And the third game in the freshman class is Crafting the Cosmos, by David Gordon and Tam. And this is a engine building around the universe, it looks like.
Yeah, universe building game.
Universe building game. So the basic point of this is that, we, Jeff Engelstein and I, signed a game for development with Office Dog, and it's in the process. So hopefully within X amount of time, we'll see a similar press release if they end up taking the game in the end. But things are going well, as I mentioned.
Office Dog is a really interesting concept, just as a reminder, and you know it, Stephen, you've been working with them.
Yep.
But Office Dog was created in order to pair up mostly IPs from the greater Asmodee group, which is the Embracer group. It was meant to pair up some of the IPs owned by that group with freelance designers from anywhere. So they have some worlds, some things they want games on, and they just freelance out who wants to make games. So it's a nice little matchmaking system.
Yeah, and we've reported on that, that was sort of the general focus, but they're almost the deeper focus was to simply have a route for designers that are external to Asmodee to get into Asmodee. And the anecdote that that Luke Petterschmidt told me was that, like, Reiner Knizia had to ask somebody that he happened to know at Asmodee, like, I want to pitch a game to you guys, but I have no idea where to go. So if you just think about that a moment, the most prolific game designer had no idea how to get inside the company because it's so big and so diversified,
Yeah.
you know, with people all over the world. And most of the stuff that they do is designed in-house. So how does an external noted or not noted game designer come? They will now go through the Office Dog studio, and Office Dog will have their own imprint, their own brand, but it's very possible that a game could even get probably funneled back to a different company. That's possible as well. But it's
Perfect.
external game designers who are hopefully going to bring them things they can marry to their internal massive number of IPs. Very interesting concept. More to come. So this is very, very interesting, Corey. We reported recently that Asmodee said that their North American sales in 2022 were down 5%. And they believe the entire market of North America was down 8%. And they were also saying things similar about the global market.
And Hasbro had chimed in on that as well.
It did. And we now have other evidence. So we don't know which one is better, but this anecdotal evidence from ICV2 indicates that hobby channel games were up 10% in 2022 in North America after a spectacular 2021. So here's the story that they put out just 6 days ago. After 2 great years, including a spectacular 2021, the hobby games channel grew 10% in 2022, capping a 14-year run of growth, according to the ICV2 estimate based on publicly released information and our interviews with game retailers, distributors, and publishers. All of those emphases are from me, not in the article. The 10% growth in 2022 comes after a spectacular 2021, in which sales in the channel grew 30%, and a strong 2022 in which sales grew 15%. That's growth of almost 2/3 for the hobby game channel since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So in a little context to this. So ICV2, which is a news site for gaming in general and comics, lots of geek stuff, they use public information that they can find. Plus, they go and talk to retailers, and they go and talk to distributors who you don't get to hear who they are, and you don't get to see any of their individual sales because a lot of these companies want to keep things a little bit more private. But they talk to ICV2 under anonymity clauses, and they have come out and said they believe there's a 10% growth in hobby games. I am skeptical on this. I think when Asmodee comes out and gives their data, I think that's more indicative. And again, we now know that Asmodee is part of a public company, so they have to be absolutely forthcoming with the numbers. Corey, do you have any take on this? I'm skeptical of these, and I'm more believing in the Asmodee numbers.
I'm with you. It's basically a poll of ICV2 to the different companies. And if you picture it, if I call up Big Joe's board game company and say, "Hey, how you doing?" They're going to say, "We're doing great."
Right.
So I think it is biased. I think it's inflated a bit.
It's inflated a bit. It's interesting the number came out to be 10%. I don't know. It just sounds very round. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna say that I also know from companies that a lot of them are struggling, not ready to go out of business. Some of them, not, I mean, I'm sure some are really teetering, but I even know from some of the bigger companies that they had a very rough 2022.
And I know a lot of these companies are pulling back on extra marketing and things like that because they had a rough year.
Yep.
It's also interesting that they're talking about 2022 being up 10%, but their data, they're actually saying that they're pulling numbers all the way back to 2020. So it's hard to say where they're getting these numbers, and they're very round numbers, like you said.
Yep. So to compound, to add on to that interesting quote good news that we just heard from ICV2 about the growth, Yahoo Finance. By the way, Yahoo Finance, for those who don't necessarily follow the market very closely, is one of the most respected, regardless of how disrespected Yahoo might be. It's one of the most respected sources for financial news. They're a news aggregator. They do a very good job of bringing in news on various topics, but their finance news is great, and people quote them all the time. They have aggregated from a site, Report Linker is the site this came from. The global tabletop games market size is expected to grow at a CAGR, C-A-G-R, of 11.82% from 2022 to 2028. So think about this number for a second now. So approximately 12% growth from 2022, which is already in the can, to 2028. So this is saying, yeah, we're going to see growth, but we're going to see a 7-year growth of 12% in total. This becomes more in line on some level, right, with the Asmodee figure versus, oh no, we just grew 10% last year. Let me read a little bit from this Globe Newswire. ReportLinker.com announces the release of the report Tabletop Games Market Global Outlook and Forecast 2023 to 2028. So maybe this doesn't include the 2022 figures. Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
These conventions are gatherings of people compete and play games, or they're just talking about the general now. They jumped from there and they talked about the gaming convention scene, and they talk about all the ones that we go to, UK Games Expo, PAX Unplugged, Gen Con, Essen Spiel. So they're talking about how people are getting together.
They're introducing the market to people who don't know tabletop gaming.
Amazingly, we know this market. And they even talk, this is a very well thought out thing, segmentation of the market, board games, puzzle games, tabletop games, collectible games. They've done a very good job. So, people out there listening to us could write the beginning of this article, right? We could all write this because we know how the markets are all segmented. And then finally, toward the end here.
This next part, though, I think is the most important. They basically, so this is a document meant for the general financial world who've never heard of board games. And they have a whole paragraph on, you've never heard of board games. And then right after it, there's a paragraph saying, board games are worth, they said $18 billion market. So they're basically saying this is a huge market you haven't heard of. Keep an eye on it. It's growing.
Yeah,
which is great for this type of article.
They're really trying to push the fact that while you all out there in the finance world, and that could be some professionals or people who are investors, but they have money invested in various segments of the market, look at this market. It's going to get a 12% growth over the next 6 years. You might want to consider it as part of your portfolio. And there are a limited number of companies that you can directly invest in, or who knows, some companies might spin off and go public. Very interesting. I think this is closer to supporting the thesis by Asmodee versus the one that ICV2 came up with, but it could be argued in either way. Let's take one more, and this is kind of a big one here. And this talks about the top hobby board games for the fourth quarter of 2022. And again, ICV2 goes out and does some anecdotal stuff. They don't go directly and figure this out because nobody can really figure out what are the top games in the various segments of hobby gaming, board games, cards and dice, RPGs, collectibles, and miniatures. So, Corey, I don't know if you've looked at the stuff yet, But Ignacy, every year we go through this, every time I bring this up, he always says, I do not believe that these are the top games. Every time. He always gives me that. So my look here is that Wingspan by Stonemaier Games, right? A quote, small, quote, they are small. They only have a few employees, but their sales are phenomenal. They have the #1 game in the industry. And this is not the first time it's shown up at Wingspan, which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Gloomhaven comes in at #2. Again, an independent company with a handful of employees. They've got essentially one product, Gloomhaven, and now a second one, Frosthaven, and they're coming in at the #2. And this is a $250 game, whatever it is, when it's being sold now post the Kickstarter. So amazing that these two tiny companies can have the 1-2 games in the hobby channel in North America.
And then they've got on 3 Catan and on 4 Ark Nova. And this is what makes me doubt the list a little bit, is I knew Ark Nova was popular among gaming circles, among conventions and hardcore gamers. But I've heard repeatedly that sales of Ark Nova have not really been, among the general public, have not been spectacular. I suspect that ICV2 has gotten their sales number from a very niche store, 1 or 2, hardcore gaming stores. So it's an interesting list.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. I see Ark Nova being played all over, but again, right, we are the alpha traveling gamers too. We go to every convention and we see it's all over the place. So our experience is not necessarily the general experience.
I also see Hero Quest on here at #9, and I didn't know how widespread Hero Quest was. I mean, of course, it crowdfunded on Hasbro's own Pulse crowdfunding site, and everybody knew that it crowdfunded and it delivered and people bought it. It actually met the numbers that Hasbro was looking for, but I don't hear about it being played all that often. So I'm curious how popular it is now.
And that was at #9, and right above that at #8. I know we're jumping around here. Is one of my favorite games in the whole world, Betrayal at House on the Hill, 3rd edition, also by Avalon Hill. That's an amazing. It's an amazing game, amazing redo of their game system, actually, to make it like not a broken system. I still even love the old set.
It's still broken. Edition.
It's not broken anymore. It's beautiful.
It's still broken.
You have no taste in games.
It is an amazing storytelling engine,
and this is
creates stories.
And this
but
is
those
what I like.
Stories are often broken.
And this is what I want. This is what I want. I want experiences with my friends.
I'm with you.
I don't want to hang out with you on a table, of course, but I want to hang out with my friends and play these storytelling games. All right, we'll just finish this out with Azul at 5, Ticket to Ride at 6, Cascadia at 7. Then we said Betrayal, Hero Quest, and Vagrant Song by Weird Games at 10. And a very interesting list. And wouldn't have been the ones that I would have guessed, but that's pretty darn good. Now we also have, after that, we definitely want to talk about Cards and Dice, because this is also, we kind of say these are board games when we're talking about them for the most part, though they're less big games. But we have the usual suspect of code names right at the top, followed by an old game at this point, Smash Up by AEG. I don't even remember any new content coming up.
There are.
Okay.
They just announced a new expansion box. It's another. What I love is Smash Up has done a couple expansions that they basically call the "our lawyers look at this and we're not going to get sued" expansion, where they blatantly rip off IPs they're not allowed to have and change them just enough. Oh, and they embrace the fact that they are kind of ripping off IPs. So I believe it's the 3rd one of those was just announced. And Smash Up has a huge following. There's 28 expansions now. And people still love the game. It's an entry-level game. It's like Munchkin. It's going to sell forever.
Things like Lord of the Bada Bings, and it's like a mafia game where Don Vito Corleone is the no, you can't use him. You got to use somebody a faker name.
No,
he's Sauron.
Yeah, the new one has a Back to the Future ripoff.
That's funny.
It's really funny. Yeah.
Other games on the list: Clank, now by Direwolf, Marvel Champions, The Lord
And
of the
this is the
Rings.
thing, is Clank a card game? I really think of Clank as a board game.
It doesn't
I
make
mean,
any
it's a
sense.
deck builder board
It
game.
makes no sense to be on this list. Absolutely. That's a thank you for
Yeah,
stopping
yeah.
me. But yeah, because Clank has a huge board. It obviously has even chits and it has lots of cards. So no, that's a
And there's
really bad one.
so many versions. There's Clank
Yep.
in Space, there's Clank
Yep.
Legacy.
Yep.
Just announced is Clank Legacy 2. Clank Catacombs just came out. It's a great game and a great
Mm-hmm.
series. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited about all of them, but it's a board game.
At number 5, Lord of the Rings. I assume that's the LCG. 6
Gotta
is
be.
Uno. 7 is Dominion. 8 is Unstable Unicorns. 9, Arkham Horror. Still selling. I mean, obviously we're
Well,
doubting the exact place on these lists, but obviously
be
still
careful.
sells for Fantasy Flight.
Arkham Horror, this is the card game,
Oh,
and it
that's right.
recently had a redo. So it actually is a pretty
LCG.
recent LCG. Yeah.
Right. Sorry
Third
about
edition
that.
or something. I don't
Card
know.
game, even though we have board games on this list. And Marvel Legendary. I don't know that there's.
Yeah.
They also put out all these, lists for collectible games and RPGs. I don't know that. You know what? On the RPG one, I saw something very interesting. We have to talk about RPGs. We talk about it here on the podcast as well, once in a
Sure.
while, especially since I do so much. But obviously, the top RPGs are Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. 1, 2, never going to be broken, in my humble opinion. Number 3, the 5e OGL, which I don't even know exactly what that is, but it's Kobold and Darrington and others.
I think
guess
they're just saying every D&D
yes.
compatible within the OGL, which is an enormous category. So
Yes.
every one of those games is going to be a tiny slice, but together they're number 3.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. So you would get like the Free League has stuff that they do. So this is everybody who does something for the Dungeons and Dragons 5e OGL. Got it. And then the next 2 are really where I wanted to get to. I think this is fascinating. Number 4 and number 5 are Vampire the Masquerade and Transformers RPG. Both of those games by Renegade Game Studios, which has really come and diversified their catalog from the biggest games, board games, to small board games, and now heavily into RPGs, which, while not even a fraction of what a D&D, a Pathfinder, or all the 5e OGL are, still to show that they are number 4 and 5. Kudos to Renegade Game Studios. Good friends of mine. Love these guys, and they're doing great stuff.
It really shows that push is working, because I mean, I've noticed from my mailings and just press releases and things that they are pushing their RPGs really hard.
Very, very cool. Corey, the next couple of things we're going to have to wait till Ignacio's on, because they've got the letters G-A-M-A in it. And I know Ignacio is a huge fan of Gamma. So we have to wait until he's back on the show so that we can take those questions with him here. So in the meantime,
he's running for president of Gamma, isn't
he? Ignacio could become the next president of Gamma. I think
there you go.
That's got we should
sounds
start
right.
We should spread that rumor immediately.
We should probably, just as a kindness, we should just nominate him.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Let's get on to strategy and tactics. Okay, so here in strategy and tactics, we have our first question from the guild, which that's where you got to put them. And by the way, we're running out. We're going to need more questions. Kirk W., who's at the Corset Maker, and he, inspired by a comment on episode 253, he says, if all board gaming companies were required to create quarterly reports like publicly traded companies on the stock exchange, and you were tasked with creating an index that would best represent the status of the board game industry, similarly to how the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or the Dow Industrials, right, does for the overall market, which companies would you include in your index? Would you include any non-board game companies, for example, other geek-related companies? Corey, oh my goodness, this is maybe the greatest question of all time. I mean, I
It
love
really
it.
is a Steven question. It's like
No, but I need, right, it is because of the financial aspect of this. But I need
I
you to
think you're
help me.
flushing here. I think this
I'm
one has
blah.
gotten you
Oh, you have to watch me
too
on the
worked
YouTube.
up.
I'm 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 I'm
So
what's it?
verklempt,
Schwitzing. I'm schwitzing, Corey.
schwitzing.
That means sweating a little bit, boys and girls. Okay, Corey. So if we were going to
Yep,
create a, if we were going to create an
right.
index to show how much the board, how, you know, how the game industry is doing, what
Exactly.
companies would get put into there, and I'm going to make some notes as we do this. So who would you
So
say?
I think obviously you have to have Asmodee.
Of course.
Asmodee has so many companies under their belt and they're doing so much. And then you need to make a decision. You need to decide, are you really trying to focus on the hobby board game industry or are you featuring board games in general? Because you need to decide whether to put Hasbro in. Um, I
Oh
would
no, yeah, we
opt
have to keep.
not.
We got to keep them out. No, no,
Well, yeah,
Hasbro, I think
well,
doesn't count. It's
just in
board games.
full prejudice and bias,
Yeah.
we will keep Hasbro out. Uh, Personally, I would put in Stonemeyer. You said that Stonemeyer does, they do a lot of sales for a little group. Um, and I think they're a big player. Myself, I would put in Capstone. I think Capstone is showing the leading edge of the industry. They tend to catch European markets really early and grab things that are hot and they show trends. And then some of the Euro groups, you got to go Pegasus Spiel.
Pegasus. That's an interesting
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
So this
What
is what
about
I'm.
you? I see you typing like
So this is what
crazy.
I'm doing here. And I kind of like imply this as, because he said, when the Kirk is his name, Kirk W. He
Yeah,
said, create, well, how would you create one? And he said the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. And then I even added the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So, and for people out there who don't have the financial background or don't care about the markets like I do, like every day listening to
it's
CNBC and stuff,
because Steven's my financial advisor. That's why he's so into this.
I am not a financial advisor, and if I was, I am not your financial advisor. So anyway, so the S&P 500 is an index of 500 stocks that show how the broad market does, right? 500 large, but obviously a broad selection. The NASDAQ is very specific to mostly 100% of like tech stocks,
Yeah.
really cutting edge technology. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average is 30 stocks only, which are the biggest of the big companies. So it's so in the theory there is that as the big companies go, so does the rest of the market and the economies. Yeah. So what I'm doing here, as Corey is saying, he's showing what's going on behind the scenes here. I created my Dow Jones.
Your biggest.
The biggest of the big, and then I'm going to create this other one is going to be my NASDAQ, I think.
Yes, and I think that's what I
my
was
innovators.
When I was talking about capstone trends, that's definitely fits.
And then we need like an S&P 500, which would be like some of the the next tier, smaller companies.
But isn't that almost the same as the Dow? The S&P 500 is the top 500. The Dow is the top 30.
Yeah, but that is specifically means you got smaller companies in the S&P versus the Dow. In general, you're gonna have smaller. But all right, so maybe it's too hard to do that one. But so I have here for my Dow Jones companies, I've got Asmodee, I've got CMON. I'm going to throw Renegade Game Studios into that one. I know
that's really interesting.
They're not nearly as big as the other ones I just said. I'm going to throw Pegasus in there because they're a global mover now. I think that's a good one. I'm trying to think of anybody else that would go
AEG.
Oh yeah, I'm putting AEG in there. Absolutely, they're like a global mover almost at this point with the stuff that they're doing, even though they're focused on a smaller range of products. That's what they're doing. And then on my NASDAQ, I have Cephalofair. I have Stonemeyer. I'm putting Restoration Games in there. They're just doing such interesting things. and I'm putting Capstone that you just mentioned. They're the ones like sort of like the movers and the shakers, the things that are like, kind of
Capstone
cutting
really,
edge.
yeah, they've been super interesting in the past year. They've been grabbing really hot euros. They've got a good feel for it. So I take notice when Capstone has a pre-order of something I might not have heard of.
This could be, you know what? This is going to be, I'm going to put something like this down at the, like during our questions. I'm going to ask this question in the in coming weeks because I think this is a beauty. And we'll have everybody else pick those companies that are the big ones, the movers and the shakers, and maybe the small ones up and coming that, that people should be looking at. I think that's kind of the way to kind of round it out.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Good one. And the next, we don't have a lot of time because we're like going so long and going deep dive in here, but I'm going to take this one last question here from Mark Spector, who, by the way, is the president of the Grand Gamers Guild. And that's a company I would put on like my small games company, my S&P 500 type.
Yeah.
I'm going to write it right now so I remember that he's a great guy. And small company, always has that 10 by 10 booth, but he's constantly picking some really interesting stuff and
Really hot stuff.
ways.
Like his current one is Tir Nanog, which is really interesting looking. So
Absolutely. Grand Gamers Guild. I'm writing him down on my S&P. So Mark asks, he's Camus73. He says, Camus? Camus is a wine. Camus is him, I guess. Marketing is the bane of my existence. Spending money without being able to determine if dollars are well spent drives me crazy. How
yes.
are my marketing dollars best spent? What do you think? I mean, this is actually
Ah,
the $5 million question of gaming.
literally the $5 million
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to start, say, a new uh film studio, uh where would I spend my money to let people know that it's out there? I literally have been discussing this for the past couple months.
And
So
what's your answer? You could affect
uh
Mark Spector because I know he's a avid listener. He is. Mark's a great guy, avid listener. He and I talk about things like
yeah,
this all the time.
for me, for actual money spent, I think it's got to be the big conventions. So I've
Really,
unfortunately come to the conclusion that I think I need to spend a lot of money at Gen Con to really let people know what I'm up to.
that's interesting.
So we are actually debating how and how much and all that
Uh,
as we speak.
that's interesting. I would say that you can't remove the convention scene from the concept. And again, it depends on really
Oh
how
yeah.
much you got. So Mark does not have $100,000 to spend. And I mean, Mark, I'm sure I can say this. He doesn't got $100,000 to spend on a convention or on a marketing effort. He's got more like, for the year, he's got more like 10 grand probably. Again, Mark, I don't know. We never talk numbers, but I'm going to say that a company of his size will spend in aggregate like 10,000 on conventions and stuff like that. Maybe probably
Yeah.
more if he goes into other forms of marketing. But I would not put conventions. I would put conventions like presence there, but like as in direct marketing spend, like I mean, maybe you're thinking about putting 50,000, 100, some crazy number to like plaster your name all over the halls and the this and that of Gen Con. I wouldn't put that high on my list if you're a smaller company. I would put higher on my list leveraging companies like Envoy,
Okay.
who specifically go out, take your games and create events around your games. They
Right.
go, they do store splashes where they appear simultaneously, over the course of a weekend or a month. They appear and they say, we're featuring this game at these times, and we have someone there that's going to demo it and show it off to the customers of this store.
That's really
That to
interesting.
me is a great way of spending your money. And that's what I did with Envoy. I'm giving them a shout out here. They're great
Sure.
for gamers as well to be associated with because you can then get free games as long as you go out and show them off in public at stores, at conventions, things like that. So shout out.
What do you think about the movement with digital banner ads and digital advertising? I know that Board Game Geek has been upping their site and having more emphasis on advertising on the BGG site. What do you think about that as a marketing push? because
Uh,
most hardcore gamers, and I would say that little board game companies like Grand Gamers Guild are going to cater more to the hardcore gamer
yep,
market.
yep.
They're going to go to this website.
I
People are
think
going to be at 3GG.
Yeah, I think BGG is a great way of doing it. I think you can do lots of very specific targeting with BGG. I think Facebook is actually has potential
Yeah,
because Facebook is the single most specific targeting that you can do. You can say, I only want females who live in these states and in towns of less than 30,000. I mean, you can get so targeted with what you can do with
sure.
Facebook marketing. And
But I
oh,
think
by the way,
3GG's already got that targeting for you.
they also have that targeting. But
Well, we've got a very niche target market.
exactly. So, and then of course you can say, and who belong to a board game related group, like on Facebook. So you can really get, so of all the people that might see this, you know that people who are in board game groups will see it. And they live in the
Yeah.
United States on the East Coast or something like that. So
And
very, very interesting.
let's not
Yes.
forget, if you've got an actual board game that you're trying to push, one of the other really big ways to do that is to get one of the video groups to play your board game or review your
Let,
board game.
let's
Actually, a little better to do live play and all that.
shout out to the Dice Tower Network and shout out to Tom and what Tom does. Of course, they do great stuff. You pay for that, but you get eyeballs on it and potentially forever because it's always going to be
Exactly.
posted. Corey, we're running long. Let's get over
Sorry
to
about that. We
let's
like
get
to chat.
we like each other amazingly. I'm not, well, maybe not so much. But anyway, let's get over to playtesting. So last week, Ignacy asked, so again, we're taking his question, so he'll yell at us next time when he's back here. He says, have you ever asked your friendly local game store to order a game that they didn't have on their shelves? And Ignacy was asking that because he wants to get more people ordering his games from friendly local game stores, which creates additional demand, for the games in that channel. So Corey, you've seen what people have said. Is there anything that you've picked out here that speaks to you more than something else of all these nice answers?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get my screen all set here.
You're
So I saw Kirk W. was interesting, said, typically I'm the kind of person who's willing to pay a bit more respect to my local brick and mortar shop, which I've seen a lot of comments like this. As a native English speaker living in Germany who prefers his games in English, however, this just doesn't appear to be a reasonable option. I've inquired at my local game shops about this English language game, but the prices typically have been as much as €40 over MSRP. So there's another aspect to it that how much will it cost to ask the friendly local game store to order something, especially something a little more exotic? And the opposite of that that I've run into is trying to get a game from Europe to my local store. It can be really difficult.
very, very interesting. I'll take one from Brennan Smith, who he works for an FLGS in Columbus, Ohio. Dragon's Lair Comics and Fantasy. I think I've been there. I'm not sure. I know there's one pretty close to the convention center I have been to. And he does most of the board game ordering for the store. It goes a lot of different ways. I order new games like 11 due to the buzz about the game or based on the news outlets like Dice Tower. Sometimes I will get emails from customers trying to pre-order games from us prior to the release, and I then order it. If customers see we don't have a game in the store, they will either special order it from us, and then we go to distribution for it. And I can try to recommend another game based on what they're looking for. Sometimes I get customers that are just looking for a particular party game, and they're not sure about all the different kinds. So there's a great somebody who is keeping his nose, to the
Yeah.
grindstone, and he's checking out what's coming out and he's listening. That's great. He's trying to be proactive, or he or she's trying to be proactive. And that's wonderful.
I want to throw out to two friends of the channel who have similar opinions. So there is Mary Mac, who
Oh,
is
yeah.
just like you are not my financial advisor. Mary Mac is not my lawyer. Um,
She's great. Marion, thank you.
Marion has said, yes, I have. I try to support my friendly local game store. It worked once. After that, it did not work and I gave up. While I'm willing to pay the extra above what I could pay online to keep my friendly local game store afloat, I do expect a certain level of service. So if you're not willing to order a game for me or call me when it comes in, then I'm not going to feel bad or about ordering it on other sources. And there's a very similar thing from Sean Fleury, who's one of my writers for my podcast, Dice Tower Now. Great podcast. Why are
Yes, it
you
is.
listening to this one? So Sean has said, I have a wonderful friendly local game store, but sometimes there are just games I cannot order because either it hasn't come up as available in their distributor's catalog or it's a game that is out of stock. If they cannot order it within a reasonable amount of time, then I'll look online for a copy. So I kind of fall in this category too, as I want to support my friendly local game stores, but my tastes being the news guy and living in the cult of the future is I tend to want things that are either not quite out or hard to get. And unfortunately, online is going to give it to me faster than the game store. I'll try my best, but often it falls through, often it fails.
Yeah, interesting one as well. And then the final one I got is going to be from Ron Graves. He will always ask his friendly little game store, the Raving Gamer Board Game Bistro in Langley, British Columbia, if they can get it in. I'm rarely in a hurry to get a game, so happy to wait for it. So that's nice, right? So that's exactly opposite. So the one gamer does not want to wait. The other one says, I'll wait. I got another 2,000 games. I'll just play one of those. So thank you, everybody, for answering this question. Really appreciate it. Corey, you have a new question for this week, don't you?
Oh, I would never do that. So I this week, actually, technically just yesterday, I've been following the new GameFound campaign for Chip Theory's Elder Scrolls game, Betrayal of the Second Age. Um, and in the first day, it made like $2 million. So I started thinking about this, and I wanted to ask the public, how long do you think it'll be before a crowdfunding campaign breaks the record? And again, this is the $13 million record that's currently held by Frosthaven on Kickstarter. How long do you think it'll be before another game comes along that breaks that?
So, I mean, never is too long of a time. And obviously it'll happen, I guess, at some point. But
And that's the implication is I am saying something will break this record.
I mean, it by definition, I mean, records are broken, more people
Yeah.
enter the hobby. But, I'm going to go on record as saying I don't know. Will the next Frosthaven, I'm sure that he's going to come up with another one. I'm sure he's working on it. Not that I know
you
of.
know that a backer kit is coming up for a miniatures set. And historically, miniatures games break records. Miniatures games make money no matter what. It's kind of accepted within the game.
There's going to be a miniature set for Frosthaven, Gloomhaven, right?
All of it, and including the RPG. So it's going to have,
Wow.
last I heard, over 400 miniatures. And it's going to be on backer kit. So that's a bold move there, that it's not going with Kickstarter or GameFound. But it's going with backer kit.
Yeah, what's the price point going to be? It's interesting. I mean, if it's
I don't know any details yet.
Yeah.
Or I won't talk about it. But
all right, we have to go. So I'm gonna go out on record. I'll go out.
But I'm gonna miss you. Don't go.
We have to go, Sue. We have to go. But let me make my prediction. You make your prediction, so to speak. I'm gonna say that we will see this record broken within the next 2.5 years. So by the late 2025, it'll be broken. What about you?
1 year.
Within 1 year.
Within 1 year.
Within 1 year. Well, everybody, I've just created a thread because Corey doesn't know how to do this in our guild on Board Game Geek.
I have no computer experience.
None. So please go find the play testing thread for this question and post your answer to it, and we may take your answer on the next show. In the meantime, this very long episode has to wrap up, so final scoring. Thank you so much for listening. Help us spread the word about this podcast by telling your friends to download Board Games Insider wherever they like to get their podcasts. Or you can now watch Board Games Insider on the Podfather of Gaming YouTube channel. You want to be part of the podcast? You can. Just ask us questions for our strategy and tactics segment by posting them in the correct thread in our guild on Board Game Geek, or answer our question to you from the playtesting segment by going to the guild on Board Game Geek and looking for the thread with this episode's question. Why are you typing and saying, Stephen will read anything here? You're such a jerk. Stop typing in my show notes. Check out our websites, which are portalgamesus.com, the podfathergaming.com, and dicetowerdish.com. We are all over social media, so interact with us, please, on Facebook. Please like our pages, which are /BoardGamesInsider, /PortalGamesUS, /PodfatherGaming. You can also speak directly to Ignacy, Stephen, and Corey. Twitter and Instagram, it's @PortalGamesUS, @PodfatherGaming, @DicetowerDish, and @DicetowerNow. And the very active YouTube channels are Portal Games Movies, Portal Games Gameplays, and the Podfather of Gaming. On TikTok, Ignacy is Portal Games US. We would love to see you in person at an upcoming convention in 2023. So if you come to any of the ones we talk about, please find us. Let's chat. We really live to do this with you. Board Games Insider is professionally edited by Joshua Bowman from Tabletop Submarine Podcast. If you want your podcast edited by Joshua, you can reach out to him at tabletopsubmarine@gmail.com. Also, that great voice you hear during the intro, outro, and in-between segments is that of Ray Greenlee. He can be contacted to do voiceover work for you at raygreenleevoiceover.com. Corey, this is the end of the show. I did put a little note here that I'm starting a web store for Podfather merchandise. So please go on Facebook to the Podfather of Gaming group. Sign up and subscribe to that group. Join the group, and you'll find the link that I'm putting up for the Podfather merchandise, both embroidered stuff like you see me wearing here, as well as mugs and stuff like that in an Etsy group that our friend Marion put up. And while you're at it, she also did one for Corey merchandise as well, which is extremely silly.
Whose stuff showed up first?
Well, I didn't want to do it for a while, and then I said, all right. Yes, your stuff was first there. So you can buy Podfather merchandise, you can buy Corey Chorus and things like that there as well.
Do need to say that this is it's so funny that this happened. This was a joke against me that they made a whole bunch of Corey merchandise because Marion, who does work for Gen Con, was learning how to use an e-commerce store in Etsy and wanted to know how to do all this for other various business ventures she's done, and I was her test subject. So
there you go.
I apologize in advance for Corey merch.
Yes,
and I can't speak for the Podfather merch, but I apologize for those two.
Podfather merch features things like Podfather underwear, male and female. So I absolutely got to go get myself some Podfather underwear to go with my Podfather
I don't
shirts.
want to know about this.
Come join the Podfather of Gaming group. It's a fun group. That's the most important point, and you can check out merch from there. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, everyone.